What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Wave Magnetic here, coming to you with another tutorial. Today's video, I'm going to answer the question about why most of you guys' mixes suck. Okay, now I know this sounds like kind of like, damn, why you being so harsh, bro? But I mean, it's the truth. You know, sometimes the thing that really makes it so that you don't have a good mix is because it's usually it's a mental thing. It's the thought process behind what you're doing. So it's like there's only one thing you really need to understand when it comes to mixing. Okay, and all mixing is about volume control. That's it. It's about balance and volume control. And the way you achieve balance is to have the right volumes between the instruments. Okay, so when you even when you think about how different plugins work. Okay, so the most important plugins that you use are EQ and compression. Okay, and those are part of the principle of volume control. The number one principle to making your mixes get better is volume control. So a compressor, it controls the volume of a sound. It makes it so that a sound gets only to a certain point. It makes the loud parts of the sound softer, and then you can bring up the lower parts so that the dynamic range is smaller, so it controls the volume by making the peaks come down. Okay, now an EQ, people don't think about it this way, people don't say it this way, but EQ ain't nothing but volume control. Only difference between the EQ is that an EQ, it controls the volume of specific frequencies of a sound. Okay, so if a sound is too dark, right, you want to turn up the highs. Or if it's too bright, you want to turn down the highs. Or if it sounds muddy, you want to turn down some of the mid-range. Or if it sounds like it's thin, you might want to turn up some of the low end. You know, it's like that's really all it is. All mixing is just volume control. All right. So let me show you some real world applications of this. I'll pull up a mix that I did on one of my songs, this new song that's out called Relentless. All right, so this is pretty much the mix. This is the song for the most part. And I'm just gonna give some like real quick examples. So like when I first started mixing the song, I started with the drums because you know, this is electronic music, so the drums are extremely important when you're doing electronic music. And your kick drum just has to be bumping. It has to be right. So kick drum is usually going to be the loudest part of the mix. And you gotta prioritize your song. So sometimes it's going to be a few instruments that get the priority. Sometimes it's just going to be one instrument that gets the main priority. It depends. So for me, it's kick drum, it's bass, and it's trumpet. Those three things have to be super popping. Otherwise, the mix falls apart. Okay, so I understand that before I go into my mixes. And if there was a vocal, the vocal needs to be popping. So usually when the vocal's popping, when the vocal's out front, the trumpet's behind the vocals. Okay, it's going to be softer. Then when the vocal's not out front, the trumpet takes over. It's really that simple. And the kick and the bass is always going to be bumping because this is electronic music. All right, so I'm gonna just hit play on this, okay, and you'll see the balance. So, you know, you got a little bit of that. You can hear the trumpet is out front, the kick is really strong, and the bass is really strong, and all the other stuff around it is just supporting, okay? So like when I'm doing this, like say I want to solo the drums, okay? If I heard this and I said, okay, I'm not hearing enough drums, I'm not hearing enough kick, I would just go over here and turn the kick up. Okay, right? That's pretty simple, right? You turn it up. The other thing is that if you heard it, you say, I don't hear enough low end in the sound. Okay, so I pull up an EQ right here, and the EQ is boosting at 60 hertz. I boosted it 1.9 dB. Okay, so if you listen to it, I'm gonna just turn it up so you can hear it. You see, when I turn up the 60, if I turn it up, the sound gets super fat, super big. And if I turn it down, if I turn down 60 hertz, it sounds thin. And I listen to that say, I want more low end. The sound isn't fat enough. So I turn it up. Okay, now it's too much. It's too big in the bottom end. So now I have to balance it out. You know, I'm gonna put it back to where it was before ish. I think it was 1.9. Yeah, something like this. So that's a really good balance for that, okay? So now when I hear it, if I turn this EQ, like with this EQ, I did something different. So if you listen to it without it, so now my kick drum, it feels like it has enough low end, but I feel like it could get rid of a little bit because I have a bunch of mud below 30 hertz that isn't necessary, really below like 40, 50 hertz. And I feel like it's not knocking enough, okay? So you got to think about what frequencies make the drums knock, what frequencies do I not need, okay? So the knock frequency is around 120 hertz. I know this from experience, okay? So right here, 127, I boosted 2 dB right here or ish, and I did a cutoff at 38 hertz. All right, and that right there makes it so that the kick drum is knocking. Listen. Now what happens if I turn up the knock frequency more? Listen. You see that? That ain't nothing but volume control. That's literally just volume control. And the entire mix changed. I did control the volume of a frequency range on the kick drum, and my entire mix either fell apart or came together. That's some crazy shit, right? It ain't nothing different than that. All mixing is just volume control. Another example is the way you mix kick and bass, okay? So right here, I have this envelope follower. This is a little trick that I do a lot. This is how you can make a dynamic EQ out of stock plugins inside of Ableton. So I have the envelope follower on my kick drum, right? This is going to control this EQ. Is it right here? Yeah. This EQ right here, this every time the kick goes, it's going to push this down because the envelope follower, every time the kick happens, this is going to control this little node right here, the number 1. It's at 50 hertz. Watch this. Again, volume control right there. It's making it so that it thins the bass out, cuts down the low frequencies on the bass every time the kick hits, so that the kick can come through more, so you can hear it. right? But it brings it back up. It brings the low frequencies back up on the bass, so that you still can feel the bass and you still feel that warm low end. Because I could just let's see, I could just cut off the low end like this. So you could go up to, because the kick drum's around 50 hertz ish, so I could cut off up to 60 hertz and it would kind of work, you know, and there would be room for the kick drum. But if I did that, then my bass would sound like shit. I wouldn't have the same warmth that the bass is supposed to have. I wouldn't have the same fatness in my track, because the bass isn't supporting the low end. It isn't, you know, helping it out. So I choose to use a dynamic EQ, because that makes it so that the low end, the bass hugs the kick drum. It just surrounds it and supports it and keeps the song feeling grounded the whole time. It makes it sound real fat, you know? So, but it ain't nothing more than volume control. The same thing with the trumpet. Trumpet, very important in my music, okay? I play trumpet, if you didn't know that. So again, it's volume control with the balance here, and you see that? If I change the balance at all, the mix falls apart. I found the balance for this song, okay? Now, the other thing is that, say I'm hearing it and I say, I can pull up a EQ and say, trumpet sounds too bright. Well, I'm going to make it dull. I'm going to just turn the volume down on the high end right here. Listen. Now I want it brighter, so I'll brighten it up. Turn up the high end. It's that freaking simple. It's not this guy. It's not so complicated. I'm gonna turn it back to around where it was though. It was somewhere. It was somewhere around there. You know, and then if I say, okay, say it's bright enough. Say it's bright, right? Sounds bright, but I'm like, I'm still not getting the bite that I need from the horn. Well, what's the bite frequency? 3K, or 2.5K, somewhere between 2.5 or really somewhere between 2K and like 3.5 or 4K. Somewhere in there is the bite of an instrument. Okay, this is for vocals, this is for trumpet, this is for synth, this is for pretty much everything, so that it really is. That it's also a piercing frequency. It's the frequency that gets it in your face. Okay, so the trumpet's not in your face, but it's bright. So what do? I go to my 3K. I go to my presence frequency, and I turn it up until I feel like it's loud enough in the track. You see how that one knob again changes the entire mix, and all I did was turn up a frequency area on one instrument, and the track either falls apart or comes together. So think about that. And again, compression. I have a compressor on here. This is just an 1176, you know, the waves joint, and this is controlling the volume of the trumpet so that it doesn't get too loud. Okay, and then I can just balance it out, right? So if I take this off, listen to what happens to this mix. Yo, I take it off, the thing down there just disappeared. It's like nothing, no good. It's horrible. All right. So you need compression so that the stuff doesn't get too loud, so that you can turn it up and it'll have the presence. I don't want to say it'll be in your face. Or really, if you don't want it in your face, you can also make it that way too. That's if you increase the release, but that's a whole nother thing. You can use compression to get stuff in your face, or you can make it so that it stays in the background. Okay. And that's literally everything in terms of mixing. It's just mostly 90% of it is EQ, compression, and just turning the volume fader up or down. Yeah, that's it. That's the number one principle for making your mixes better. That's really the main principle of mixing, like volume control. Yo, that's it. All right, so if you liked the video, if you learned something new, make sure you hit the subscribe button below and hit the notification bell so that you'll know the next time I have a video. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Peace.